Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. We're calling this one the 24 hours later special, going about 24 hours later than I normally would have because I was flying back last night from Boston. Ended up turning my first road trip of the season into a mini winter vacation for myself and my wife. We had a great time in Boston, got in on Wednesday, came back on Sunday. But unfortunately, I was considering going live last night. I was trying to muster up the energy, but we didn't get back home until about 11:30 and 11:30 Pacific time. And I felt at that point, it was probably better to just go live today. And I went live earlier with the Lakers Collective. So I shared my thoughts about the game. Had to get a fresh cut before I got back with you guys. So shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to everybody. Shout out to Jeremy, who is claiming, I know he's a big fan. He's claiming he's my biggest fan. I think that is up for debate, but if you want to claim that, you can claim that. He says I don't read his super chats though, which I believe I've read every super chat I've ever gotten. So if I've missed one, I apologize, but I do try to read every single one. But shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out the late night gang. I appreciate you guys. So let's get into, we're going to go through a quick breakdown of the game. And then I want to touch on, Lakers-Spurs preview for the NBA Cup quarterfinals and get into the Q&A, of course. So the Lakers beat the Philadelphia 76ers 112-108 on Sunday night to wrap a successful 2-1 road trip. LA is now 17-6, number 2 in the West. They are 6th in offense, 20th in defense, and playing their second consecutive 3 games in 4 nights stretch. You saw that take a bit of a physical toll, more so in that Boston game with how they started that game and just second night of a back-to-back on the road, East Coast road trip. But I thought there was some cumulative effect into the Philly game as well. Got off to another slow start, and I think we're down like 21-11 midway through the first quarter, but they hung around. And I think that is like, for this Lakers team, with how great they've been in the clutch, they are now 8-0 in clutch games and undefeated when they have a halftime lead. Didn't have a halftime lead in this one, but like basically if they're in the game or they have a bit of an advantage in the first half, they are not losing. And it's like you got to kill them multiple times to really put them away, right? Like basically every loss has been a double-digit loss. So it's like if you can jump on the Lakers early and create that separation, create that distance, you can beat them. If you can't and you let them hang around, they are probably going to win the game, at least based on how the season has started. So I thought just a lot of smart second half adjustments for LA, a few of which I will touch on. But I want to start with Buha's big picture being the return of the king. And we've touched on LeBron and his struggles, I think most notably coming off the Toronto game. Like, screw the streak, right? Like, it ended in the most poetic way possible, but it wasn't about the streak per se. It was more so, I think, like him going 4 for 17, him getting blocked a few times, him struggling to finish. Like, he was not looking like himself. And up to that point, he had not been the same player, particularly on the offensive end. But last night, LeBron was the 20, 24, 25 version of himself. To me, this was the most he's looked like himself since his return. And I think having a little bit of time off in between that Toronto game and the Philly game did wonders for him physically. I thought his jumper in particular, he went 29 points, 12 of 17 shooting for LeBron. And this to me was the best his jumper had looked. And not even just from a results perspective. Of course, the results were there, going 4 for 6 on threes, but really just like his lift, his rhythm, and just the way that his shot looked, it was the most like it's the most it's looked like it previously had, and his jumper had not been following up to this point. So I thought that was a really promising thing, and the Lakers got him going early with a couple of post-ups in the middle of the floor or on the left block. Then same thing in the second half. They got him a couple of elbow touches, middle of the paint, and he was able to attack Dominic Barlow in isolation. But then we saw in the fourth quarter, he scores 12 points, including 10 straight to ice the game. And the first couple were off of, they were blitzing Luka. So Luka Ayton pick and roll. They blitz him. And that had been a little choppy at that point in terms of Luka had gotten that one turnover where Ayton, he thought Ayton was popping for some reason, throws it out of bounds. And then like Philly was able to disrupt LA's offense a little bit in the Luka and Austin stretches there down the stretch of the fourth quarter. But a couple of those are Ayton in the short roll hitting LeBron on the weak side due to LA's off-ball movement, and LeBron being that safety valve on the left slot where per Darius Soriano, he shot 41%, I think, over the last 2 or 3 years from that particular spot. So that's been a money spot for LeBron. He hits the three with the foot on the line, so it ends up being a long two. Then he hits another three. And so those were a couple of jumpers directly out of that play of Ayton short rolling and then hitting LeBron on the weak side. Some nice reads there from Ayton. Then they go to the Luka LeBron pick and roll, which is something that, if you guys have been listening to my show since the Luka trade, this is something I've been clamoring for. This is something I've been wanting to see more of, is the Luka LeBron two-man game. And certain matchups, it's difficult to run because teams will just switch it and you won't necessarily create an advantage. Even that argument, or even that notion, I push back on a little bit because I still think there are ways where LeBron could slip the screen, or depending on the positioning on the floor, you could get one of those two guys in the post, and like there's different things you could do with it. But with Paul George being the primary guy on LeBron and Quentin Grimes being the primary guy on Luka, especially when they were able to switch that and get Grimes onto LeBron, that is a mismatch. Quentin Grimes is too small to guard LeBron James in the post or on drives. So they started to spam that a bit. We saw it a few times, and I think it was pretty successful. And one of the times, LeBron ends up getting a jumper, and then the final time they do run the LeBron two-man game into a LeBron ISO, and we see LeBron ISO, and then he hits the final jumper. So the first one was a three. The second one was that, takes a couple dribbles to his left and hits the pull-up jumper. And to me, like, I don't know when LeBron will physically be back to himself, right? Like, I think this was a major step in the right direction, and, but he's still not quite to the level he was at last season, just from a physical perspective, right? Like he's continuing to ramp up. He's continuing to ascend. Maybe this was it. Like maybe everything is clicked and he will look like this moving forward. I assume it'll be a little rocky in terms of, especially like he's not playing back-to-backs. And maybe if there are stretches here where there are maybe not back-to-backs, but like an every other day stretch, LeBron by like game 2, game 3, game 4 of, let's say the Lakers have like 4 games in 8 days, but it is of the every other day nature. Okay, maybe he looks a little, rusty or not quite himself physically at that point. But I think this version of LeBron, if we're calling him the number 3 option right now on the Lakers, best number 3 in the NBA, I guess the only player you could put in that conversation is whoever you dub the number 2 option versus the number 3 option in OKC, right? Like, I guess if it's Chet, then that is a bit of a discussion there. But like LeBron just seeing him operate on the weak side, and a lot of it has been his passing in the weak side. And they did run some 3-man game there where it would sometimes be Luka, Ayton, and LeBron running some sort of 3-man game. And LeBron hit him for lobs a couple times. We also saw a lot of LeBron Austin 2-man game in the second and fourth quarters, and we know like that chemistry and that history with those two has always been incredible. But a lot of what we had seen from LeBron had been him more as a playmaker, him unlocking different wrinkles within the offense. But I think we saw him more as a screener, more as a big man, and then the Lakers actually running offense through him and to him in a way that they just had not quite done. And part of this was Austin's struggles offensively. Austin started the game 0 for 8, finished with 11 points on 3 for 16 shooting. So they had to go to a different option. I do think as of right now, the hierarchy will continue to be Luka, Austin, LeBron. I think, as I've said before, that's not going to change from like a usage perspective, but it has changed from like a playmaking perspective where right now LeBron is dishing out more assists than Austin in their time together. And LeBron has been more of a playmaker. Austin's been more of a scorer. And part of that has been LeBron has not looked quite the same in terms of getting downhill, in terms of his jumper. And again, maybe this is a turning point for that. But I think last night was a glimpse of what this could all look like with LeBron clicking, right? And when he is playing, like if we see LeBron play the way that he was playing last night more consistently or even on an every night basis, that's just going to raise the Lakers floor where you can have a night where Austin goes 3 for 16 and you still win the game against a solid team on the road. You have the comeback after being down 7 at halftime. And I thought LeBron also played a big part in the defensive run that the Lakers went on. So it got a little shaky there at the end of the third where Philly went on a little bit of a run to close the quarter. But the first like 9 minutes of the third quarter, I thought was one of the best defensive stretches the Lakers have had all season, especially recently, which I will touch on that in a second. But LeBron was out there quarterbacking the defense. He was anticipating drives and stepping up and helping. And I think it just was a really big part of that run. So the Lakers started switching everything and went from 1 through 4 switching to 1 through 5. And we're having DeAndre Ayton switch on to Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe. And LeBron, I thought in his help shifts as either the low man or depending on who he was guarding, like where he was stationed on the floor, I thought he played a really big part in that. So again, it's one game. I don't know if it's a turning point. I do think things are trending in the right direction, and I think LeBron will look like himself sooner than later, more consistently. And this has been something I've been trying to preach in terms of the patience and just the context of the situation. I think the defensive end is more of a mystery box for me in terms of I don't know, like that is arguably where we've seen more of the drop off physically from him, where I don't think he's quite had the same juice on the defensive end as he had going back to especially that like mid-December through late February stretch that he had. I don't know if we've seen like that level of defense from him yet. So that remains to be seen if he can conjure up that side of the floor to that extent. But LeBron operating in the post, which the Lakers did a really good job of spamming that. LeBron operating as a screener with Austin and Luka, and then LeBron operating as a triple threat on the weak side, either as a passer who can hit the roller for a lob or an entry pass, who can make the skip pass to the corner, who can just reverse the ball to, you know, pitch the ball back to Luka or to Austin and then go into a pick and roll if they're running the initial action with DeAndre or Jackson. Like there's just a plethora of options that the Lakers have offensively, and they had been succeeding with a relatively limited LeBron up to this point offensively outside of the Clippers game. And this was the first game where he looked like himself, and he got out in transition. He had the transition dunk. He had the other finish pushing Grimes in the open court, and I think it might have been a left-hand finish. And so like he scored in a variety of ways. The jumper was falling. He got downhill, and he also scored in the post and in isolation. So I think in terms of the pecking order, again, it'll continue to be Luka, Austin, LeBron. And based on the results and performance up to the season, I agree with that. But I do think we saw a real shift here in terms of because Luka also, I mean, it's crazy. Luka had 31, 15, and 11. He had another 30-point triple-double. I believe I forgot if he tied or passed Jokic and Westbrook for most career 30-point triple-doubles. But, 9 for 24 shooting. He was coming off of obviously the birth of his daughter, Olivia, his second daughter, and the flight coming back from Slovenia. So Luka was jet lagged, and he did get in the day before, but like still that's a tough trip to fly. I mean, he flew from LA there and then flew back from Slovenia, and to do that within less than 24 hours, be back playing. That is I mean, the dude is superhuman, but like that's still a tough ask. And so with Luka and Austin combining to go 12 for 40, LeBron needed to, like, the Lakers needed LeBron. They needed him to step up. They needed somebody to step up. And DeAndre Ayton had 14 points. Rui had 17, but the bench combined for 10 combined points. And Jake LaRavia got the shot, the inadvertent shot from Gabe. Gabe did hit a big three early in the fourth, but still, it was not enough from the bench. So they needed LeBron to step up. He did so in a big way, and I think this could be a turning point. I don't want to say like he's going to look like this every single night, but it showed that he can still do this. The people who have been doubting and questioning whether he can, I think that quieted that. And then to spam the LeBron-Luka two-man game, to spam him in general as a finisher, that was really encouraging to see, because again, that was not something that we had seen up to this point in the season. In terms of notable performers, I already touched on a few of them, but Luka, 31, 15, and 11, 2 blocks, 5 turnovers, 9 of 24 shooting, 2 for 9 on threes, 11 for 14 at the free throw line. I thought Luka, all things considered, based on how much time he had missed and the circumstances of, I assume he had multiple sleepless or sleep riddled nights in Slovenia, just the emotion of having a child and just honestly staring at your child for as long as you can, especially knowing you're about to leave. Like there was a lot going on for Luka from that perspective. So it's understandable he didn't have his most efficient night from a shooting or ball handling perspective. But again, we're talking about 31, 15, and 11. The rebounding continues to be a critical part of the Lakers defense. I also think he was a big part of the helping, and like Luka can be a very helpful and effective help defender. And I thought some of his rotations in that third quarter and even in the fourth quarter were critical for LA. So just a routine 30-point triple-double for Luka, another night at the office for him. DeAndre Ayton, I think Ayton is someone who just what he's doing from an efficiency perspective is remarkable. 14 points on 7 of 7 shooting. He had 5 lob finishes, which tied his career high set as a rookie in 2018. So this was something he had not done in 7 years. And 7 for 7, I thought his patience in the pick and roll, like what the Lakers were doing early in that game. And this is also going to lead me to Rui, who had 17, which was, I believe, the most points he had in a game in 10 games. So Rui had his best offensive performance. He had taken a bit of a hit. Yeah, that was Rui's most points in a game since November 10th against Charlotte. He had 21 in that game. Since then, he had not had more than 14 in a game. Had a couple games there. Dallas and New Orleans took 13 shots, took 14 shots. Obviously had the Phoenix game where he only took 1. But this was Rui's most points in a month, basically. And a big reason why was, so Philly was really struggling with their defensive game plan in terms of both tagging the roller and not leaving the weak side corner entirely open. So there's a couple of possessions early in the, or not early, but throughout the first, where Rui just gets wide open corner threes because of all the attention and Philly sucking in to the middle of the floor to prevent that lob pass to Ayton. And then Luka is so strong and is so good at making that corner skip pass that above his head, he hits Rui in the corner. Rui hits a couple of those. But then, they start to cheat over and respect that and say, hey, we're not going to leave, or we're trying to do that delicate dance of not entirely leaving that guy, but also tagging the roller. And then you get the DeAndre Ayton lob. So it was a nice 1-2 combo there in terms of Ayton putting the pressure on the rim and rim running. And then Rui also as the corner shooter of just right now is a top 5, just simply a top 5 to 10 shooter in basketball. And it's just, you do not want to help off of that guy, especially in the corners. So that really compromised the Sixers defense at a high level. But DeAndre Ayton, again, 14 points, 12 rebounds, a couple of assists, both I believe came late to LeBron, a steal and a block. Just a high level defensive performance for him as well. I thought particularly in that third, he was a big part of LA's success. And I think 2 of the last 3 games, with the other one being the Toronto game, have been 2 of his better defensive performances on the season. So the Lakers defense as a whole has not been good. And I will touch on that with one of my takeaways, but it's been in spite of some awesome defense from DeAndre. And I think he continues to come into his own on that end and honestly disprove a lot of the criticism defensively that he took going into the season. Rui, 17 points, 6 rebounds. He has been rebounding the ball better. So he hit a couple threes early, and he also had the incredible finish off of the over the head pass from Luka that, he didn't take the 3 because there was I think it was Paul George who closed out on him, but then he kind of pump faked and then took a couple dribbles and hit the pull up in his face. The only thing here continues to be Rui's screen navigation and off ball defense is something that is now officially on the scouting report, and LA was able to shut off Maxey and Edgecombe for most of the fourth quarter. They did shake loose a little bit, but then one of the things that Philly just spammed down the stretch of that game was Paul George coming off of pin downs, and Rui was the primary guy on Paul George, and he just continues to really struggle with screen navigation and off ball defense. And that's not even really I don't even put that on Rui. I think the Lakers are just putting him in a really tough position right now. Austin was guarding Tyrese Maxey, which is not a matchup that Austin should have. And Rui was guarding, there was times he was on Edgecombe. There was times with the switching, he was on Maxey. But even Paul George is sort of a shell of himself physically. But even with that, Paul George's ability to slither around screens and create separation, that is just not a strength of Rui's defensively. So the Lakers defense continues to be in a tough spot right now. And I don't even know what the answer is to fix that. I'm more so diagnosing what is going wrong. Already mentioned LeBron, 29 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, a couple turnovers, 12 of 17 shooting, 4 for 6 on threes, 1 for 2 at the line. Then we have Austin, 11, 4 and 4, 1 steal, 1 block, 2 turnovers, 3 for 16 shooting for Austin. Second straight game where he had a really rough start. This one extended into the second quarter where he started 0 for 8. Did go 3 for 8 from that point, but still, I give Austin a bit of a pass on the offensive end just because the previous 2 games he had 80 points and 18 assists. So when you post back-to-back games averaging 40 points and 9 assists, I think it's okay if you have a bit of a dud. Fortunately for the Lakers, LeBron, Rui, and Ayton were all able to, LeBron in particular, but Ayton and Rui to a lesser degree were able to make up for that with their efficiency. Austin got cooked by Tyrese Maxey. That's no surprise. I thought his second half defense was much better, and he was able to shift him toward the spots on the floor that the Lakers wanted, and that, shifting him toward the help or, funneling him to the help. But the first quarter in particular was one dude, Austin is quick. Austin is fast. Then there's Tyrese Maxey fast, which is just a different level of fast. And it was straight line drives of just, he was way too, I said, going back, I think it was a few days ago or maybe a week ago, I was Tyrese Maxey might be the player in the league that between his speed and his pull-up shooting, and he burned the Lakers bigs. He hit them on both Ayton and Jackson in terms of pull-up threes in LA's drop coverage. That's why I thought it made some sense that they switched to a switching scheme in the third quarter with their centers. But this dude is a blur out there, and then you add in it's almost like, you know, Steph Curry with like with De'Aaron Fox's Jets, and like that's an impossible player to guard. And I thought the Lakers did a really nice job in the second half slowing him, but he still dropped 28, 7, and 9. But yeah, Austin bore the brunt of that in the first quarter, and he was just blown by him. And I don't really know what, like, that's not a player that Austin should be defending. He's just way too fast for him. But that's the current state of LA's starting defense. Off the bench, Jake LaRavia, I thought, had some good defensive moments, but I think was not quite the same after taking that shot to the face. Did hit that one sidestep 3-pointer off of a pump fake, but 4 points, 2 rebounds for him. Jackson Hayes was in the trenches battling Andre Drummond, 3 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks for him. The rim protection with Jackson and DeAndre continues to be really encouraging. But Jackson, I believe that was back-to-back games of 3 blocks for him, if I'm not mistaken. The Toronto game and this one, he had 3 blocks. So 6 blocks on the road trip for Jackson. And then Gabe hit the 3 early. I thought he was he's supposed to be the guy that could, at least with the current roster, that can defend these quicker, shiftier guards. I thought between McCain, Maxey, and Edgecombe, they basically got whatever they wanted against Gabe. So that I thought that was a little disappointing on the defensive side, and continues to foul a lot. I don't even mind the fouls necessarily, but I just think I don't think the defense has been quite up to snuff recently. And then you factor in the lack of overall production. I don't know if you guys saw, someone tweeted out put out a graphic of like the players who are averaging 20 plus minutes a game and their combined points, rebounds, and assists. And Gabe was at like 7 or like 7 point something. And the next closest player was at like 10. So Gabe is last in the NBA right now in terms of just simple stat, combined points, rebounds, and assists. And, I know the on-off data has been really positive with him, and he does do things that, like, he typically fares well in the intangibles of the game. It's still just kind of tough to see the lack of production for someone making double-digit millions and, like, is not really a lockdown. I think the defense is often solid and sometimes even good, but he is not. I would say to make up for the lack of production, he would need to be at a higher level defensively that he is not quite right now. So that makes it a little tricky. We saw a shift from Adu Thero, was with LeBron back, with Luka back. He was phased into a smaller role. I think with Adu, we continue to see, like, he's clearly ahead of his physical game right now is ahead of his mental game, I would say. Like, I think we are seeing some of the growing pains, especially defensively, in terms of like where to angle guys to certain spots on the floor. And just overall, I think his processing is a work in progress. Now, that is okay because he is a rookie, and rookies have a learning curve on both sides of the ball, and that's totally understandable. This continues to be why I think he needs to get more minutes and needs to get more reps. Like, we have seen progress from him, and I think it's only going to go up. It's only going to ascend from here as long as he continues to get reps and more opportunities. So this was a big road trip for Adu, and I think there was a lot to be encouraged by. And then Vando got dusted off. Now, I thought the defense, and he nearly had an offensive rebound that was kind of this loose ball that he at least was like going for. It was going out of bounds. And sometimes, I would say most of the time, you do not see Lakers players go for those types of loose balls. It'll be Marcus. It'll be maybe Gabe. It'll be maybe Austin. And then, like, that's kind of it. So to see Vando come in and try to save a ball going out of bounds in like that, violent of a manner, what was nice to see. At the same time, I believe first possession or one of the first possessions he was out there, Philly does not only plays off of him, but doesn't even fake that they're recovering. Like sometimes the Lakers do this a lot when they're playing off of a certain shooter. They will do the half-ass like fake recovery where they kind of stick the arm up and then go, pretend to close out to that player. Philly, there was two guys. I think it was Embiid and someone else. It might have been Barlow. I think they both looked at Vando and were like, "Nah, we're good. You shoot this," and he missed it. And I don't want to be too results oriented or too reactionary, but I do think that was a big shot for him. I think that was a big opportunity where he continues to not play in part because he cannot make that shot at even close to a league average rate. And to have that be like, it's your first opportunity in 8 games. You're out there, you get tested by the defense. You have a wide open 3. I feel like that was a bit of a swing possession for him of like, if he cashes that, I wonder if he has a longer shift, or I wonder if JJ kind of just notes, okay, like good to know. Let's see if he could do this over a larger sample size. But I think there was nothing really like memorable from his shift. And I think Vando needs to stand out a little bit in a positive way to earn more minutes moving forward. So I would not say it was like a bad shift. I just felt like it was sort of a bit of a meh shift. And I think a meh shift after having 8 games off was not what you wanted to see, in my opinion. And I don't think earned him more minutes or opportunity moving forward. In terms of stat of the night, 2 quick ones for me. I mean, 12 fourth quarter points for LeBron, but particularly 10 straight to ice the game. That to me was the stat of the night, and really the way that those points came, as I touched on earlier. And then second stat of the night has to be LA is now 8-0 in clutch games this season. They are, I'm not going to say unbeatable in the clutch, because I do think they are bound for a clutch loss or 2 at some point, whether it's now in the regular season or come playoff time. But they are pretty darn hard to beat in the clutch, and that is a testament to the best clutch defense in the NBA right now, and just high level of execution from, for most of the season, 2 players, but more recently 3 players who can attack you at all 3 levels and who can poke and prod and figure out the weakness of a defense and then attack you that way. So just no team in the NBA has the combined level of shot creation and playmaking that the Lakers have at the top of their roster. And I think that's something that has really shined through in these clutch time victories. And then 3 quick takeaways for me. Takeaway number 1 is going to be a successful road trip. Like LA, this was not an easy road trip for LA. And coming off of the Phoenix loss, which was a deflating loss for them, they got their asses kicked in that game. And to then go into the Toronto game, which could have gone against them at several points there in the second half, in the fourth quarter, late in the game. They get the big stop from DeAndre. LeBron passes up a chance at extending his historic streak, makes the right basketball play. Rui cashes the game-winning 3. They win that game. Then they get their asses kicked again in Boston, but that one to me was more of a schedule loss. Also, Boston, from a shot quality perspective versus their shot making, definitely overshot that. As we noted at the time, like there were certainly some things that with Boston's style of play and offense that are shortcomings or weaknesses for the Lakers defense. They do not guard the 3-point line well. They also do not generate a lot of high percentage threes themselves, or they generate high percentage threes. They don't generate them at a high volume. And that trade-off or that battle was too decisively in Boston's favor, and LA could never quite make up the ground. And then the Philly game, I thought, based on how the first quarter went and even the first half, I thought Philly, frankly, should have been up by more. And that to me was a sign that, hey, LA's still in this game. They're only down 7. I thought with how Embiid was playing and some of the looks, Philly had several wide open threes in that first half that they just bricked. And I think there's an alternate universe where Philly's up by 15 or 17 at the first, at halftime based on how the first half went. It was more of that kind of a half than LA being down only 7. I thought LA was pretty fortunate to be down only 7, but that's a testament to their resolve. That's a testament to they continue to hang around even when they're not having their, like, it was not a good half for them for the most part, but they hung around, they kept it within 7, and then they had an incredible third quarter. I'm back. They had an incredible third quarter where they took the lead and they never really relinquished it. Like it did get close and Philly was able to tie it late, but LA prevailed. So I just think anytime you go above 500, I think 500 is like the bare minimum, but 500 or better on the road, that is a successful trip. So sure, would you have liked to have seen maybe more convincing wins against one of these two teams? Sure. Would you have liked to have not had a thorough whooping to the Celtics, who are the Lakers' hated rivals, and that game was over in the first quarter? Sure. But going 2-1 and now being 2-2 over this stretch of tougher competition, remember, coming off the 7-game win streak, we were talking about only one of those teams was above 500. And at the time, it was the Bucks, who are now below 500. But like, they had not played the best competition. Going into this stretch, it was going to be Phoenix, Toronto, Boston, Philly, San Antonio, and then OKC or Phoenix, and then potentially, we'll see how far they advance and who they play off of that. But like, this 6-game stretch was going to be much more difficult. It did not start well with the Phoenix loss, but since then they've rebounded, going 2-1, and 2 high-level execution games or performances in the fourth quarter. So I think all things considered, and based on the schedule loss with Boston and who was in, who was out for some of these games, like I think these were 2 impressive wins for LA, 2 of their better wins of the season, and overall a impressive and successful road trip for LA. Takeaway number 2 is Marcus Smart injury update. So JJ said that they are hopeful that Marcus will be back Wednesday against San Antonio. And why I think that is so notable is since the Utah game, when the Lakers held Utah to 106 points in that 108-106 road win, over the past 7 games, the Lakers are 28th in defensive rating. And so bottom 3 defense, that is not going to cut it. That has been why they slid from, I think at one point they were like 13th, 14th in defensive rating. They have slid all the way down to 20th. And the defense has been struggling, and they've had some good stretches. They had some good stretches in the Toronto game. They had some good stretches in the Philly game. But for the most part, LA has been getting by with their offense and not their defense. But a big part of that has been the absence of Marcus Smart. With Marcus Smart on the floor, the Lakers have a 106.7 defensive rating, which would be the second best defensive rating in the NBA, behind only the Oklahoma City Thunder. With Marcus off of the floor, the Lakers have a 119.5 defensive rating, which is, I'm looking it up here quickly, going to assume that is the 27th best defense in the NBA. So right now, the difference with LA having Marcus Smart on the floor versus having him off is the second best defense in the NBA versus the 27th best defense in the NBA. And the issue, of course, is that Marcus is dealing with a back issue, and JJ has been ramping down his minutes, and he's only been playing 18 minutes a game since LeBron returned. So there is a limit there, apparently, to how much he could play for now and just his availability in general. But this is something that is important, and this is, to me, in like a bigger picture perspective, to me shows like, even, and of course Marcus has played some of these minutes, like we'd have to isolate it to see, okay, what's Marcus without Jake, or what's Marcus like Jackson. The Lakers have fared well at times with Jackson on the floor defensively. If we're looking specifically at defensive rating, the players who have impacted it the most are Maxi Kleber, Marcus, Vando, but the problem is the offense falls off when Vando's on the floor. Austin, I've talked about some of this, and so if we maybe isolate Marcus, away from Maxey or away from Vando and some of the bench minutes there earlier in the season, or away from LaRavia or whatever, like maybe that changes a little bit. But I think one, this highlights Marcus's value and impact on this team. And two, I think it also shows that if the Lakers ultimately make a move for that high level defensive player at some point this season, like if you can have a guy having a Marcus-like impact or maybe even a higher impact, and you can be the number 2 defense with that player on the floor, and maybe figure out a way to not be the number 27 defense when that guy's off. Like that's the sweet spot of, again, like I think with a larger sample size, I don't assume the Lakers are going to maintain a 107 defensive rating with Marcus on the floor. But even if that's in like the 110 to 112 range with him on the floor, that's a really good defense. And that I think is something they need to strive for more consistently moving forward, because the current state of the defense is like they're just barely getting by. And it's basically like, can we get enough stops to have our offense carry us? And while it is working so far, that is an unsustainable approach longer term. Like you do not see teams win titles with bottom 10 defenses as the Lakers currently have. And so ideally, Marcus returns against San Antonio. He was great in that San Antonio game. If you remember, he had, he took the charge on Wemby that fouled him out, and he had some big, 50-50 plays in that game. So I think the Lakers will really need him. But just larger point has been like, since he's been out, the defense has really fallen off. And we do see a stark contrast in terms of him on versus him off. And then takeaway number 3, before we get into the Q&A, I wanted to do a quick Lakers-Spurs preview, because I actually think, and Jason made this point today as well on the Lakers Collective, but the Spurs to me are in some ways a better version of the Sixers, because they are powered by a high scoring, athletic, quick backcourt. And whether it's Fox or, Castle is more of like a 2-3 depending on the lineup. But Fox and Castle and Dylan Harper and even Devin Vassell, they have multiple looks on the perimeter in terms of guys who can attack you off the dribble, guys who can attack in pick and rolls, guys who can shoot threes, guys who can hit pull-up jumpers. And we saw elements of that in that matchup earlier in November with Lakers versus Spurs. But assuming they have everyone back, which it's looking like they will, it's going to be our first look at Lakers versus Spurs with Fox and with Harper. And those are probably those are their 2 most like point guards, right? Like, Fox and Harper do tend or trend more towards scoring than playmaking. But in terms of like the actual just passing and playmaking on the team, those are 2 really important pieces that were out for that game. Now, the Lakers were without LeBron. I think they were without maybe someone else that I'm forgetting. But this will be hopefully a full strength matchup on both sides. Wemby will be back. Kessel will be back. Maybe Smart will be back. And LeBron will have a couple days of rest. And I would just like to see a very high level game where I think that version of the Spurs is probably the best team the Lakers have played this season outside of OKC. It's debatable, I guess, between them and Minnesota, but I think Minnesota was not playing their best basketball early in the season. I think Minnesota has been much better more recently. So I would say like this version of the Spurs, if they're at full strength, is the best team the Lakers have played this year outside of course, OKC. So it's going to be a real test, a real battle to get to the quarterfinal. I think San Antonio, the big difference between San Antonio and Philly, and well, there's a couple big differences. I mean, one is the biggest difference, which is the man in the middle, Victor Wembanyama, and I assume he'll be on a minutes restriction, but even 24 minutes of Wemby is better than 0 minutes of Wemby, and he could make a really big impact in that time. But the other one is just the defensive side. And it's not just Wemby. I mean, Castle defends at a very high level. And the guy that I think is going to potentially sneaky, make a sneaky big difference in this game is Luke Cornett, who is also out. Statistically has been one of the best rim protectors in the NBA this season, has maintained a really high defensive rating for the Spurs when Wemby's been off the floor, and was part of the reason why the Spurs have not really missed too much of a beat without Wemby has been Luke Cornett's rim protection and being out there. So I think assuming Wemby isn't on like a crazy minutes restriction, you could get 48 minutes of Wemby and Luke Cornett out there for for San Antonio against LA. And that is a big difference, I think, of I think like looking at even like the Philly matchup, Embiid was not moving well. Andre Drummond is a limited defender. And if you have some foot speed or rim protection issues against the Lakers, that is death. I think San Antonio is like the polar opposite, where they have two monsters you could put in the middle of the floor and put in different spots, and they're going to protect the rim. Wemby can obviously shut off both the primary guy and also prevent lob passes. And then they also have the dogs on the perimeter. So I think that's going to be a really tough test for the Lakers. I think the flip side is going to be how they attack Wemby, both trying to get him in foul trouble again. Also, the physicality that they play with. I thought Rui had some really nice stretches against Wemby in that game. I think LeBron will probably get the Wemby assignment as well. And we've seen if you can be physical and get into his legs and push him around a bit and get away with that contact, that could be a way to slow him down a little bit, which the Lakers did for most of that game until he started to go off a little bit right before he fouled out. So I think the Lakers' transition defense and three-point defense in particular are going to be really big in this matchup. I think the rebounding battle is going to be big. Going back to that game, remember there was a ton of fouls, ton of free throws. So who can win that battle? I do, of course, favor the Lakers, where they typically, like, that is one of their superpowers, is creating that margin and that advantage there. But I think the Lakers are in a much better place than they were nearly a month ago, especially offensively, and incorporating LeBron, this version of LeBron. I don't know that San Antonio, like the one way I think to attack San Antonio is with big power wings, because like Luka and LeBron can both post up and they could make plays out of the post and score and create for themselves or create for their teammates. I think Austin has he's going to face the Castle and those types that I think can give him a little bit more trouble, but I think this is going to be a really fun game, a really high level matchup. I'm predicting the Lakers to win and go on to the quarterfinals in Las Vegas, but I don't think it's going to be easy. And I think this is going to be another crunch time game that LA improves to 9-0 in the clutch. But Danica, thank you for the super chat. The moment they ran the Luka Braun pick and roll, immediately thought of Jovan. LOL elevates the offense a lot. Thoughts on Luka's rim efficiency, 93.5%, and free throw percentage. Luka has been, incredible efficiency this season. And, I think we've seen a real difference between this season and last season, just pulling up his shooting splits right now, 93.5% within 3 feet. Last year, that was at 72%. With the Lakers, 78%, in Dallas, 75% overall. So his prior career high was 23-24, where he had 83.8%. So I think 93.5 is probably unsustainable, but.
All right. We are problem solving here. So I am on my phone and we gotta gut this one out on the phone. I don't know what is going on, but back to the Luka LeBron pick and roll. I think it is something that they have to spam. It depends on the defenders, right? Like there are, again, the matchup or the matchups I brought up last year were when they played Indiana and they had Nemhard on Luka and they had Siakam on LeBron. In theory, Siakam is one of the more switchable bigs who could probably hold his own against Luka, among the best among like fours and fives. So that's not necessarily a mismatch, though I would argue like this season that would certainly be a mismatch. But it's more so getting Nemhard switched onto LeBron and spamming that and what that looks like. So I think it's something that they need to go to more frequently. And I was encouraging to see that happen. against the Sixers on the stretch there. And Luka's rim efficiency and free throw percentage. Let's see. I still have his free throw, his basketball reference up. So the free throw percentage is obviously attempting a career high from um, 15.8 free throws per 100 possessions, 11.7 free throws per 36 minutes, and 12.1 per game. 81% though is great, especially like that's a career high for Luca, and that I think has taken his efficiency to a different level this season, and just one of the reasons why he should be firmly in the MVP mix. Drip Show, appreciate the super chat. Thank you. Shout out to Drip Show. Check out his work. Then Ahmed Braun. Never done this on mobile, so we're figuring. No, this is not. Well, super chat from Ahmed Braun says Michael Thompson pleading to Luca and Austin to give LeBron the ball in the broadcast was pretty funny. LOL. Vando's probably gone at the deadline. Uh, Trying to get this comment up, but in the meantime, yes, it was funny because those, and rightfully so, Austin and Luca, I think deserve a certain amount of usage, and it makes sense why they would take certain shots, but neither one was in, I think, the proper rhythm down the stretch of that game. Like Luca got the post up on the right block, but both guys I thought were just missing some of the shots that we're accustomed to them making in terms of. Uh, I thought they both had a lot of good mid-range looks. Both got downhill and just weren't converting at their usual levels. Austin more so than Luca, of course. But I wanted to see them spam LeBron a little bit more, and they finally did that over the final few minutes. And the issue continues to be with Vando is that it's just not a very tradable contract. So I'm I wouldn't be surprised if he was gone in the sense of like I think based on where both sides are at, or at least where like JJ's at with him in the rotation, and I'm sure Vando wants to be playing more and feels like he can contribute more to a rotation. I think like that part would make sense. I think the issue continues to be I don't think I would be very surprised, and at least in the conversations I've had, have not had anyone like view that as close to as anything close to a positive contract. So I do think it's something that you either have to attach an asset to get off of Vando, or you have to be taking on a worse contract. Like a really interesting one that I forgot who brought it up a couple streams ago was the Terrence Mann one, where Terrence Mann has the same contract as Vando in terms of years, but he's making a few more $1 million per year. I think he's at like 15 and 16. So like Terrence Mann is probably someone I would rather have if I'm the Lakers of just if I'm on this contract, Terrence Mann is just a better player, and I think fits more with what JJ wants and his style of play. So that would be my preference if I'm the Lakers. And if it only caught like I think their proposal was Vando and Dalton for Terrence Mann, I would do that in a heartbeat personally. Now for the Lakers, you are kind of admitting defeat on the Vando front, and you're also probably selling low on Dalton, or at least like lower than what you had wanted to initially. But I just think if Terrence Mann even is in like that competition with Gabe for like the ideally the ninth man role on this team, which based on Gabe's spot in the pecking order is probably a little bit higher. But if you could have Terrence Mann there as real competition, or even just an option as like guy 10 or 11 in the rotation, I think that does upgrade the back end depth of this team. Next one from Angelo Torres. Thank you for the super chat. Finally, some Luca slash LBJ two-man game, and they spam. Should they spam it? Yes, they should. And I think I will give JJ credit here where he has been spamming stuff more frequently and pushing a lot of the right buttons. And I think this was like the latest version of that. So now that we have a bit of a sample size again, it was a few possessions, but even that compared to what we've typically seen, they just have not interacted in that way typically with the Luca LeBron two-man game, everybody else spacing out. So I think that's like it's a wrinkle for LA to have that I think should be matchup based, should be context based. But my argument has been like we just have not seen it, and it is like things with teams as we talk about, like we have talked about with the do and them needing to give him reps. Like a big part of the regular season is experimenting and tweaking and adjusting and learning. And I think if like we saw, I forgot the exact numbers, but I want to say uh I think like per it was like per 48 or maybe even per 100. I think it was per 100 possessions. They were running like two or maybe even three Luca LeBron pick and rolls. And when you think about 100 possessions, like that might even sound like a decent sized number, but they're often on the floor together for, I mean, it just depends how many minutes, but that's like basically two or three Luca LeBron pick and rolls over the course of like maybe 2.5 games or so, depending on how many possessions, maybe 2 games. Uh, but that ramped up to about 7 or 8 against Minnesota in the first round. And my only issue with that is like it would have been nice to have seen that 7 or 8 number be a little bit more consistent in the regular season, and then when you're ramping up in the playoffs, you have more reps with it. Because I do think, yes, of course, Luca and LeBron are two of the smartest players to ever play basketball, but there still is an element of like just the chemistry and the just deeper understanding of where each guy likes the ball and how they interact and play off of one another. I don't think it's going to take that long for them to supercharge that chemistry. But I think you look at the chemistry that LeBron and Austin have, and even I would argue now Austin and Luca have together. And part of that, in my opinion, is just reps and being on the floor together and getting those two-man game reps together. And I have I have a lot of confidence in Luca and LeBron being able to unlock that and having that level of chemistry, which is more time and reps together. So I think this was a nice step in that direction. Ray Lass, thank you for the super chat. Is it possible to get Herb Jones? Possible, yes. I would say unlikely as of right now, but New Orleans is starting to send out signals that they are open to potentially trading Herb Jones and or Trey Murphy. I think between the two, the price for Herb is going to be much more palatable for the Lakers. It's going to be much lower than the price for Trey. I think Trey's been defending better this year, but he's not quite at the level of like fit starter stopper that the Lakers need. So I would say between the two, I think Trey's a better player. And I think there are arguments to be made of him being like the better piece that you would want longer term. But I think for what the Lakers specifically need, and if they are really committing to the Luca Austin foundation, like star foundation of those two being the fulcrums moving forward, I think Herb Jones is like as close to the ideal guy that you could slot in there as possible. And we also have to remember that he has been playing in a relatively dysfunctional situation for years now. And if I think the shot quality that he would get in LA, like he has been shooting the ball better this year, but the shot quality would be even higher playing next to Luca and Austin. And I think like they desperately need what he brings defensively. Now, some of his metrics have been on the decline from an advanced metrics perspective. I know Crane just alerted people to this on X. So that is a bit of a concern. I think if it really is just a first and Rui, I'm okay with that. I think it is an upgrade, but I get why the Lakers might be a little hesitant if that's the price, and they are concerned with maybe his like defense longer term. I think the bigger issue with him is the injuries, but even that stuff, I've kind of pushed back on that. When you actually look at the injuries he's had and how many games he's missed, it's really been like like 2 seasons, but more so one really bad season last year. Part of that was New Orleans also tanking, so they had no incentive to bring him back or have him play. But he's only really had 1 year outside of that where he missed more than I believe 10 games. So I think he's actually been healthier than maybe his reputation suggests. That said, of course, he was just coming off injury tonight. Next one from Cisco. Thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on Buffkin? Feel like there's something there, and we made up the JHS mess up if we sign Smith Jr. and Kobe Buffkin and develop Thero as a young core. Yeah, I don't have any. I mean, obviously Buffkin, what he just dropped 42, I believe, with South Bay. So the scoring is there. I know he's the guy that the previous scouting department for the Lakers, because they have moved on from basically their entire scouting department. What was very fond of, and he was someone who was in the mix. And had he been there, they would have taken him over JHS. So I think that is noteworthy. But to your point, like bigger picture, I think Nick Smith Jr. has started to really pop. I feel like he probably should have played. I mean, we didn't really talk about it with the Sixers breakdown, but probably should have played in the Sixers game. His defense has relatively been, or I would say has often been subpar, but I think it has been better. And I thought the Toronto game and the Boston game were two of his better defensive performances of the season. So he's been trending in the right direction. I'd like to see him play a little bit more consistently. And Thero, we've talked about him showing his flashes athletically. So yeah, I mean, between I think Nick Smith and Thero in particular, the Lakers are finding some I would say athleticism and speed along the margins that I think they desperately need moving forward. With Kobe Buffkin, I think he's worth a potential look on a two-way deal. Obviously, LA still has Chris Magnon, who I think has a potential 3-and-D future in the NBA as well. So it's a good problem to have. LA uh, has a loaded G League team. They always have a loaded G League team. And no, like the one thing with Buffkin, and it'll be similar to Nick Smith, so maybe that becomes more of a competition at some point in the future. But I still think there's a limit to how much a scoring guard can help this group. Like, yes, when you see bench totals like 10 points against the Sixers, of course you think about the scoring. And like, I think something that's an area that the Lakers can be better in, like 100%. I just also think when it comes to like the pivotal moments, or like the playoffs, they're obviously going to be relying primarily on Luca, Austin, and LeBron, and to a lesser extent, maybe Smart and Gabe, depending on what trades they make. So I just think the bar to clear is relatively high in terms of being like I think they need more guys who can play off of the ball, who can play defense. And those are not the strengths necessarily of a Nick Smith or of a Kobe Buffkin, though Nick has been, again, defending better and shooting the ball better. So I'm interested in Buffkin like longer term as a potential two-way guy, and certainly monitoring his play with South Bay. Uh, Top dollar 5336. We entertained ourselves. Your WWE Rushmore. So full disclosure, I'm not a big WWE guy. So I mean, I'll give you some names. I'm just not. Uh, I'm not sure like how this stacks up to like the real um Mount Rushmore, but I have to start with The Rock. I love The Rock, and he to me is someone who just like I know people who've worked with him, and they have spoken nothing but highly of him and just his character and like who he is. So uh he's someone that outside of obviously just wrestling has done incredible things. So I got to start with The Rock. I would probably go John Cena, number two, in that number two spot. I think I would go Stone Cold Steve Austin's probably just my favorite straight up wrestler. And uh, I just thought he was awesome in the 90s. Like I didn't know much about wrestling growing up. I was never into it. My dad wasn't into it, but my cousins were. So I played with like action figures and knew a little bit about it. So I would say Stone Cold number three. And then I gotta probably go Hulk Hogan number four. Um, didn't always agree with some of the decisions he made, but I think as a wrestler, I mean, he's arguably the GOAT. So, or in that GOAT conversation. So I'd say those are my four. I feel like it's probably not consensus, but like you might find people who would pick those four. But I'm not going to give you anything. I don't know. I like the Undertaker, and I know a bit about uh, wrestling. I'm not. It's more of a Kobe Price, Dan Wojcicki question, but I appreciate it. Angela Torres, any reason they shouldn't invert Luca LeBron pick and roll? No, I think I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is LeBron. While I thought he got downhill better in the Philly game, that has not been like one of his strengths to start this season. So I feel like they might like we even haven't really seen it as much with Austin and LeBron this year, but it's primarily been LeBron screening for Austin. So I think they've just tried to ramp down his usage a bit and his on ball play. Doesn't mean he can't do it, and I think it would be interesting. The other thing is I think LeBron is a better screener than Luca and more of a threat as a role man, where like despite LeBron hasn't been able to create the separation necessarily getting downhill, but he has when he is rolling or he is getting that head of steam, he can turn on the jets and still get to the rim in that regard. Whereas Luca, is just a slower, more methodical practitioner and like attacker. So I think Luca can like slip a pick and roll or slip a screen or roll quickly and then like make a quick read or maybe like hit a little floater or pull up jumper. But like Luca's not going to set a screen, roll, like catch the ball and like stampede toward the rim and try to draw a foul. Like that's just not his game for as great as Luca is and as many things as he could do on a basketball floor. Like that is not really something in his wheelhouse, where that is something that LeBron can do. We've seen him do it with Austin. We've seen him do it with D'Lo. I think we saw a little bit of that against Philly, though it was obviously more jump shot heavy in terms of his attack. So I think that would be the primary reason is the fear. The fear with a Luca LeBron pick and roll is you still have Luca as the ball handler, as the playmaker, one of the best ball handler, one of the best pick and roll practitioners ever. If not, you can make a case for Luca as the best, but he's in that conversation. So you still have all the things you fear with Luca of him getting downhill, him hitting a pull up, him hitting a step back. Like those things are all present. That's why you saw some trapping and blitzing against him from Philly. But then you also have LeBron as the screener, where we have rarely seen like big men or screeners with the ability to attack the rim and also pass at the level of a LeBron. So that's what I think makes it such a unique combination in the more traditional sense. You can invert it, I think, especially if I think the ideal version of them inverting it is if it is like let's go back to last season, the Nemhard Siakam matchups. If Nemhard is going to pick up LeBron and Luca's going to clear out, and then LeBron is going to turn that into a post up and start like backing down Nemhard and playing bully ball, I think that's an interesting way you could approach it. But I think the 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 threat or fear of like Luca quickly attacking out of that as a roller, I mean, maybe I'm underselling it. I don't know, but I don't think it's quite there the same way as if LeBron is the screener and roller. Next one from RGN Cal 4872. Maxine Vando protected first for Okoro and Patrick Williams. I think the Patrick Williams contract is pretty bad. And that I don't think I don't I'll say I don't I think the Lakers don't do this. And the primary reason is just I don't think they give up the first round pick unless it's a longer term fit starter type player. And I like Okoro. I do view him as more of a bench player than a starter. Same thing with Patrick Williams. I think the Patrick Williams contract is, I think he's got 3 more years, if I'm not mistaken, on it. It's just a really tough contract. Uh, so I would say probably no on this one. If you could do it, if you could do it for a second instead of the first, I just think LA's bar for trading, like, because like think about it this way: if you trade the protected first, you are trading Maxi here, but if something pops around the deadline, and you could trade Rui, or you could trade Gabe, or you could still trade Maxi, but I'm not including him here because he's already traded. Like now you only have Dalton or a Do or a second to throw in, so you lose that arrow with the first. And then also, if let's say, I've talked about this before, but I think Giannis is much more likely to go to the Lakers if it's next summer or next season. If it's this season, I don't think the Lakers really have enough in terms of picks, and it's really tough to match contracts. But if you go to the if Giannis doesn't get traded, you go to the offseason or you go into next season and you have that extra pick or two, before even mentioning this pick that's traded, now all of a sudden I think you can get potentially in conversation if he only wants to go to a big market. But if you trade that pick, like, yes, it's partially protected, so you could trade the unprotected part to uh, Milwaukee. But I think that's where the Lakers, like, I think their bar of the guys we've talked about throughout the last couple of months, I think the only guy that they would probably do the first four would be Herb Jones. I don't even know if they would do it for Andrew Wiggins or Dylan Brooks. I think both those guys are borderline. So I think LA would not give up the first. If it's a second, that's kind of interesting, but I still don't love that Pat Williams contract. Next one from the purple and gold pinstripes. Trade Rui and Dalton, unprotected first and second to Pels for Herb Jones, Sadiq Bey. Do Pels reject? Would you do this trade? The money works. Okay, thank you for doing the money, because sometimes I will quickly scan the trade and the money clearly does not work. So I always appreciate when you guys do your homework before asking these types of questions. I I would I would do this. I think that actually plugs arguably two holes in the rotation, where now you start Herb and you have Sadiq Bey coming off the bench. And so your top, let's say the top nine, you're starting DeAndre, LeBron, Herb, Austin, and Luca. Then you have Marcus, Jake, Sadiq Bey, Gabe, and Jackson as your top 10. I really like that top 10 with Sadiq. It's also like a little bit of he could do multiple things. So like if Gabe is in a bit of a slump, or if Jake's in a bit of a slump, or if Marcus is injured, you can scale up Sadiq's role a little bit off the bench, and he does give you two-way play. I really like him, so I would do this in a heartbeat if I were the Lakers, because already I would do Rui in a first for Herb. So if you're just adding in Dalton and a second for Sadiq Bey, I would do that in a second. Do the Pelicans do this? Pelicans probably ask for a do or something else.
All right, I'm trying it back on the computer. I think the computer, bro, this has been the craziest stream of my life. I appreciate you guys for the patience. I'm gonna try to wrap it up relatively soon, just because I think my I don't know what's going on. Somehow my phone lost connection, even though I was on hotspot. I wasn't even on Wi-Fi. But I think the Pels ask for more, to be completely honest. But this could be, because realistic, like I don't know what they do with Rui. Like Rui doesn't quite fit the timeline of what the Pelicans are, I think, now in the Derek Queen, Jeremiah Fears business, and to a lesser extent, or similar extent, Trey Murphy. So I think that the Pelicans are probably looking at a longer term timeline of the next really good Pelicans team is probably 3 to 5 years from now. And I think Rui fits more of a little bit more of a win now. Like he still is only 27. So he's not like old by any means, but I think Rui's in the prime of his career. I think he makes more sense in a win now situation on a good team. Dalton, I think you could talk yourself into like longer term, though. He also is already, I believe, 24. It's an interesting one, but I would do this in a second. I think the Pelicans probably want more. Catching up here. Danica, thank you for the super chat. Which team makes the earliest moves as trades open? That's an interesting one. I think I would say Sacramento or the Clippers. Now, obviously, I'm not, and I think it's probably some sort of desperate move to try to, like, Golden State's going to be in there. Like, you know, they're going to have some limitations with the Kuminga situation in terms of what they do, because of when they could trade him. But I would say I look at Sacramento and the Clippers as probably the two most desperate teams in the NBA right now. Sacramento, because, I mean, look, they might go the other way of just tanking, and there's been some of that out there, but even then, like, it would probably make sense to sell off some of the pieces that they have. I just don't know. I don't really know what you're getting for Sabonis or DeRozan or Levine. And the Clippers don't own their pick and have had the season from hell. So I think those would be my two favorites to try to make a move ASAP. Angelo Torres, thank you for the super chat. What's Rui's value league-wide? What rosters fit him? I've said my two favorite fits for Rui, and they're both unrealistic, but this is, to me, like the types of situations he would fit great in are OKC and Minnesota. I think with OKC, if you put him next to Chet and J-Dub, and he's clearly the worst defender in the starting group, but also the front court, and he's just an elite floor spacer around Chet and J-Dub and Shea, that's like an amazing fit for Rui, in my opinion. And then I also look at Minnesota, where if he was in there instead of Julius Randle, like, you're of course losing a level of scoring and playmaking, and Randle's a critical part of their team, but I really like sandwiching him next to Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. And point, like, I think the key with Rui is that I continue to harp on is, like, Rui can make any offense better because he excels off the ball, and he is one of the rare players in the league that is like a high level shot maker who can go stretches without touching the ball and still make big plays, as we saw in the Toronto game. And like, Rui will not touch the ball for 5 minutes. It swings to him. He cashes it. So like, that is very valuable offensively. I think the issue defensively is you probably want him to be your worst defensive player in the front court. And so I think I'm more so looking at it from a defensive perspective, because I like to look at things more so through what are the shortcomings of this player or this situation, and how can you bolster that, right? Because again, we could go through, like, Rui could fit in Denver, Rui could fit in Houston, Rui could fit in San Antonio. San Antonio is actually an interesting one of, like, could he be a better Harrison Barnes? I think Barnes is still probably a little bit better defensively than him, even in his old age, or, you know, relatively old age. But I like Rui can fit almost anywhere offensively because every team could use a level of shooting. I think the key with Rui is being able to hide him and prop him up defensively. And I think the keys are an elite rim protecting big and an elite wing defender. And OKC and Minnesota stand out immediately. I guess you could talk me like Phoenix, maybe next to Mark Williams and Dylan Brooks. San Antonio next to, like, anyone could play defense next to Wemby, but as like the Harrison Barnes replacement. The couple teams I don't love him. Denver, I just don't like. He is similar to Michael Porter Jr.'s in a way. I think he's a better defender than MPJ, but some of the reasons why people had their concerns with MPJ next to Jokic, I think there would be there with Rui. And then Houston, similar thing with Şengün, where I think Şengün's been better defensively, but they do have the defense personnel to probably support him, but I just don't love Rui and Şengün as like your 4-5 combo. But like Golden State next to Drake, like, again, depending on the configuration of the lineup, if it's like Jimmy and Draymond, you are pretty small, but that's like the type of build I think Rui needs to be in. Is he needs to be at the 4, and he needs to have an elite wing defender and an elite defensive anchor next to him. In terms of his value league round, he's a positive value player. He's a good player. I think, I will say in the conversations I've had, most people view him as like a high level bench player rather than a starter. But I think there is like the acknowledgement that he can start in a certain context. And again, like the offensive fit, I think there's very little question about Rui. Rui could fit almost anywhere, because if you can shoot, you have a spot in the NBA. That is one of the most valuable things you can do. It's just the defensive end. And like, again, right now the Lakers are using him as like their stopper. I think he needs to be in a situation where he has an elite rim protector, and Ayton's been a good rim protector. So like that part of it, although their 2-man, numbers have not been good, but they don't have the elite wing stopper, and that's really the thing that's missing right now. Chuck Dangler, aka Fang Charlie, we started talking about wrestling while you're gone. LOL, check your chat hot for the next podcast. I got a 10-cent broadcaster. Mr. Guan is really interested to speak to you. Let me know, brate. Okay. Is this for the next time I'm on your show, or what do you mean by the next podcast? Let me know. But appreciate you, McLovin. Thank you for the super chat. Andrew Wiggins, really good. Herb Jones is overrated. Look, you don't have to sell me on Andrew Wiggins. I have been on the side of trade for Wiggins all summer. I know Jason's really high on it, and Jason views him as the perfect fit, even arguably more so than Herb Jones, at least in a win now context. I think Herb could be a little bit overrated. I also think, how many times have we seen, like, even go back a couple years to a previous Luka team, and the jump that Daniel Gafford made in Dallas, the jump that PJ Washington, and the jump that Derrick Jones Jr. Like, I think I'm fairly confident we have not seen the best version of Herb Jones yet, and I do think he would make a sizable jump next to Luka and Austin. I think they would set him up in transition with cutting, with the corner 3-point shooting. He would get looks that he's never gotten in his career, and his primary role would just be go out there and be a dog defensively. So I think, for example, I think he could have a Derrick Jones Jr. level impact on the Lakers, similar to what DJJ did with Dallas. But I think Herb is I think he's a better defender. He's a bit bigger. Now DJJ, better rebounder, and I think not like really good cutting instincts that I don't think you could just teach, or like some of that is just instinctual. Some of that is just your basketball IQ. That I think Herb has some cutting to his game, but not quite at the DJJ level. And DJJ jump out the gym, and like he's just a very springy player. So it's not like the perfect comparison, but I think Herb could do a lot in a Lakers uniform. So Wiggins is certainly a better offensive player, more skilled and talented and gifted offensive player. Defensively, though, I think Herb is better. Wiggins is a better rebounder, though. So like Wiggins is, I would say, better overall scorer, better cutter, better rebounder, but I think Herb is better defensively. Kami, thank you for the super chat. I was listening to Whitney's show. I'm curious how Lakers are seen around the NBA. Example, saying Luka's only maybe top 5 and the close wins are fluky. So I don't know anyone who doesn't think Luka is, forget top 5, like top 4. I think right now, with the way things are, I think most people have Shea and Jokic as their top 2 in the NBA and their top 2 in MVP. That's just the reality of the situation. I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I disagree. I think if you survey media members and people around the league, I think the consensus right now is, and I would say the consensus for best player in the league is still Jokic. Shea is number 2. I think MVP is a little bit more split and close to 50-50, but like that's just what the situation is right now. Then I think you got to Luka versus Giannis for number 3, and that's more of a conversation for people, and it's like an eye of the beholder. I think Luka is better than Giannis, so if you want to say from a consensus perspective, Jokic and Shea are the top 2. I think Luka is at worst number 3. So I don't know anyone who does not consider, or I've not had any conversations with anyone who does not consider Luka a top 4 player. I think at worst he is considered the 4th best player, but most people have him top 3. And then again, I think right now there's a consensus top 2. And then in terms of the close wins are fluky. I think there is a general skepticism for the Lakers, and this is something that I think we all do to a degree in terms of confirming our priors, where because I just looked at this right now, and like the Lakers expected wins based on their point differential up to this point in the season they have the point differential of a 13-10 win team. So if you like based on their statistical markers, the Lakers are supposed to be 13-10, not 17-6. That means they've won 4 more games than they were supposed to based on their performance up to the season. The issue with that, though, is that the season is not played in a simulation, and the Lakers continually are above the expected wins based on their net rating. And they have won lots of close games over the last few years. They have been a good crunch time team, clutch time team, and that they're always a bit of a model breaker. So we have to bake that in. We have to factor that in. And I think the bigger issue for people is that a lot of people were low on the Lakers. And when the Lakers overachieve, you could then point to, well, hey, this is fluky because look, they're winning all these close games that they're not going to win later in the season. And look at their expected wins. They should be a 13-win team, not a 17-win team. And that confirms their priors. So then you start to say, hey, well, they're actually more of a play-in team than the number 2 seed in the West. So they should be give it some time. Like this is like, it's going to play out where the Lakers start to drop some games, they start to fall, and they come back down to earth. And I think there's a lot of that sentiment out there. I think it's misguided. I think it's incorrect. And I think it's, again, confirming some of the priors of people were low on the Lakers. So when the Lakers are doing well, they have to find a way. Well, okay, the net rating, the point differential, the estimated wins or expected wins, whatever, that's what they point to, right? Now, I will note that over the course of the season, I would like to see, I have said I would like to see the Lakers have a better net rating. I would like to see a better point differential. I would like to see, it's hard to ask for more wins because they basically have been close to their ceiling in wins, but I would like to see some of the statistical markers, increase and ascend, because I do believe that typically to be a championship contender, you have to be top 10 on both sides of the ball. Denver was top 10 on both sides of the ball. I mean, OKC is top 4 on both sides. OKC is in a different class, but Houston has largely been a top 10 on both sides of the ball team all season. Denver was before Aaron Gordon went down, even with Christian Brown going down, but that was just too much for their defense to handle. But that's the standard. That's the barometer, is you want to be top 10 on both sides. The Lakers have not really sniffed being a top 10 defense. They've had a couple moments being in 13, 14, but there's still a bit of a gap there. And that was a little bit earlier in the season when one game could really skew it. I think they've largely been a bottom 10 or at least bottom half defense. And that's something that they're really going to have to address. Now, does that mean they're fluky or they don't deserve to win close games? No. And I would actually argue that the winning the close games is a really nice indicator for their playoff potential. Of in the playoffs, you play a bunch of close games, right? You're going to have a lot of games that are relatively, within. Most playoff games are within 8-10 points with 6 minutes left, right? There are the exceptions. There are the one-sided series where you get blown out, but they're going to have a lot of these single-digit games with a few minutes left, and LA is getting the valuable reps and showing that they can out-execute teams in those situations. So I think with Luka, I know there was the top 5, top 10 comment from Wendy. I think, I don't know if he was just overthinking it in that moment or what. I don't want to speak for him or pretend to know what he was thinking, but at least in my conversations, I don't know anyone who doesn't view Luka as anything other than a top 4 player at a minimum. And yes, I think there is some skepticism with the Lakers and their winning and whatnot, but I think some of that is people I'm even struggling with this now in like a different way of like, I'm like, I don't know what to make of Cleveland, right? Cleveland's 14-11. They are underachieving, but going into the season, most people had Cleveland. I had New York as my finals pick, but most people had them as a top 2 team in the East. And it's like, at what point do we change our priors and say, hey, Cleveland might be a play-in team, or maybe they end up back in like the 4 to 6 mix, but maybe they're not the second or third best team in the East. Maybe at this point it is New York and Detroit. Boston's on the rise. Orlando had a big break with the Franz injury not being more serious. Like, Philly and Miami are hanging around. Like, I think Cleveland will probably ascend and probably end up back in the 4-5 mix, but there's no guarantee. So like, you're constantly kind of making those battles and those assertions as to like what's real, what's not. But I think anyone who's just saying that the Lakers' close wins are fluky or that the record is fluky, I think that is dismissing a lot of the positives there. And sure, there are things that need to be better. The defensive end, first and foremost, but the Lakers are still racking up wins, and that's all you can do. Mo Love OG, thank you for the super chat. Notice our new defensive spacing / concepts. Yeah, I think that the help defense has been much more aggressive and better. And I think specifically the Toronto and Philly games, the defense has been better and there's been a more proactive nature. And I think in some ways, like honestly, even in the Philly game and just rewatching parts of it, the effort and urgency in the third quarter and the physicality, like I think the Lakers defense has stepped up in physicality in 2 of the 3 past games. And even some of the stretches of the Boston game, though the Boston game again, like just got out of hand way too early. But I think the Lakers, they have to be an effort-based defense, and like all defense is effort-based to some degree, but the Lakers don't have the margin for error and don't have the athleticism or the speed to not be an effort-based defense. Like they need to be trying harder than their opponent every single night on the defensive end to, I think, get anything close to their potential. But, I was obviously on the road a little bit and haven't had a chance to dive into some of the film to the degree that I normally do. But in my note taking and what I observed on film, I think the help has been, I think they've gone from being a bit more of a conservative and cautious defense to being a little bit more aggressive with their helping and their rotations. And it is leading to some breakdowns at times, and it is leading to some open threes, but I kind of like that version. But I thought some of what they did against Tyrese Maxey was like similar to what they did against Ant in Minnesota. It was just different matchup, different look, right? But sort of just saying like, hey, we're gonna ignore Gobert. At times, it's been we're gonna ignore McDaniels, although McDaniels has really improved offensively, but ignoring some of Philly's guys and just being like, hey, we're going to play into the gaps and we're going to zone this up and we're going to be aggressive with our shifts. And I think that's been a trend. True to this, not new. I assume the rest of it's not new to this. Appreciate the super chat. Rui's a bench player, awful outside of shooting. Look, I've been hard on Rui. And I know that, I have that reputation, but I would say like the outside of the shooting here though, like that is a really big thing in terms of Rui's been a top 15 at worst, most efficient shooter / scorer this season in terms of like true shooting percentage. And just like he's automatic. It's not just the corner 3-point shooting. It's been the 1 to 2 dribble pull-ups that he hits. We know, like, I think the finishing has taken a little bit of a hit, oddly, in terms of it feels like he's missing more layups than he typically does. But We haven't seen as much of the baseline cutting, but he can cut, he can get out in transition, and I think he's a useful scorer and shooter offensively. Now, to the other parts of his game, he is a below average rebounder. I would say I do think he's taken a step back defensively for whatever reason. I don't know if it's been LA putting him in tougher matchups or what. I think the help has not been there at the same level it was last year. And I think in general, his focus and processing on the defensive end has taken a hit compared to last season, where I think he's making a lot more mistakes and just mental errors on that side of the ball. So I don't want to say awful outside of shooting, because I think he does, like, I think he has had moments defensively. I think when you simplify things for him, and it's especially against bigs, like I think that's the thing with Rui, is that I think Rui's better at defending up than he is defending down, but the Lakers continually ask him to defend down. And we've seen him against Wemby, against Jokic, against Cat, against Randall. He's had good moments, good stretches, good games, good halves against those players. But the Lakers are like, hey, go guard Anthony Edwards, or hey, go guard Paul George slithering around screens, go guard Jaylen Brown, go guard Brandon Ingram. And it's like, that's just not in his wheelhouse. So I do think at times Rui looks worse than he actually is because of the positions that the Lakers are putting him in and the things they're asking of him. But I wouldn't say he's awful outside of shooting, but I do think outside of shooting and to a lesser degree scoring, I don't know another skill that he has that's like even average or above average. Like, it's not passing, it's not dribbling, it's not rebounding, it's not defense. I don't think it's like overall basketball IQ or processing. So, I mean, again, awful I think is pretty strong here, but I would say in most other categories he is below average. Muvsy Hoops, shout out to Muvsy, part of the Lakers collective team. Always tuning in, keep killing. I appreciate it. You're catching it now. Before this has been the craziest stream probably of my life based on the internet issues I've had, but yeah, I appreciate you. Broken No Money, thank you for super chat. Would you take on Dennis's contract if it only cost you a second to get him and Keon? You're talking about Dennis Schroeder. The only way I think I would take on Dennis's contract is, so Dennis, I mean, he signed a 3-year deal. He's got 14.8, 15.5 the next year. The only way I think I would consider this would be if you're getting off of Gabe. I do not want Dennis and Gabe together. I do not want to give JJ that option of playing 2 6-foot guards together and getting his Darvin on. I like Dennis. I think he's better than Gabe. The one thing that I think Gabe is better than him at, though Gabe is inconsistent in this regard, is Gabe can be an effective movement shooter. Obviously this season, I mean, Gabe's shooting better than you would probably think. He is shooting 37.2% on threes this season, and Dennis is shooting 33%. Like, Gabe is straight up a better defender. I mean, a better shooter than Dennis, and I think can be a better defender in guarding up. Now, I don't like him guarding up, and I would prefer he not guard up, but that's how JJ uses him sometimes, especially with the switching. If it only costs a second to get Keon, I would really have to think about it, depending on the money. And I mean, I'm assuming you're throwing in Gabe here. It's like Gabe Dalton in a second for Dennis and Keon. I think that the bigger issue with Dennis is just he's got 2 more years left, and that's eating into your cap situation. But again, I've also been on the side of, like, I think the Lakers are less of cap players than some people think they might be. So I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I kind of lean no, just because I don't really want to take on longer term money, especially at the point guard spot, where, like, I'll say this. I don't really love the idea of Luka, Austin, and Dennis together, right? I think Dennis is more of a player you play next to Austin or next to Luka, but because of the shooting, I think that's a little bit of a concern. And then also, it does feel like Dennis has not been happy in a lot of places. So I might lean no. Probably. Chuck Dangler, aka Fang Charlie. Yeah, today's stream was epic simply for the WWE conversations the boys had while you were gone. Haha. And yes, I meant for our pod between you and me, LFG. Got you. That sounds good. All right, going 5 more minutes here, unless my Wi-Fi kicks me out. I will have to end it, but let's go 5 more minutes. Let's get to 2 hours, and then I will have to cut this down to less than 2 hours. Chuck Dangler says 5 more minutes. Buha is here. I'm here for a real 5 more minutes because I don't trust my Wi-Fi. Kami, can we get Grimes as an unrestricted free agent? He loves Luka plus JJ. Potentially, depending on the price. I mean, it sounds like he's going to want 20 plus million. And I think to this point, I think that's a more realistic outcome with LA's cap situation next year. You know, there's a lot of factors here, right? Like it's Austin's money, though he does have a low enough cap hold that it's not really going to affect things. There's the LeBron situation. There's Ayton. There's Rui. You might have to pick between Rui and Grimes depending on how tight things are financially. But I think with how much money the Lakers are projected to realistically have, and not just like the best case scenario, because the best case scenario, you know, could involve losing some players. I think realistically, yes, Grimes is a player who would fit into LA's cap situation and be an interesting piece. As Jason said earlier today on Lakers Collective, I do view him more as a high-level bench guy rather than like the fifth starter type. Like I think we saw it even down the stretch of the Philly game. Like there are some limitations with him guarding up that the way, like, for example, I think Herb Jones, Andrew Wiggins, and Dylan Brooks, they're all bigger than Grimes, and I have more confidence in them guarding threes and even guarding, well, I think Brooks can guard fours. Herb and Wiggins, not as confident, but like they can guard like 3.5s depending on the player. Grimes to me is more of a backcourt. He's more of a 1 through 2.5. I don't love him on all threes, where those guys I think have a bit more defensive versatility and size. So I don't think Grimes is the ideal fifth starter or third player next to Austin and Luka. But to your point, yes, he is someone that the Lakers could sign. Broke with no money. Thank you for the super chat. Do you think the Lakers actually trade for her because Lakers don't trade for injured players? He's been hurt last year and this year. It's a good point, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is true that the Lakers have been reluctant to trade for injury-prone players. So I think the guy made this point earlier in the season when Herb, he got injured pretty early, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at his game logs right now. No, he got injured more recently, but maybe it was a question. Maybe he was injured in the preseason. I'm forgetting now. But I think the thing with Herb and any player that's dealing with an injury is you'd like to see, especially before you make a trade, like a sustained period of excellence or success from them. So I think with Herb, you'd want to see at least a few weeks of him looking like himself and putting up solid numbers and looking good defensively before trading for him. I do think, to your point, that is a factor that the Lakers have really weighed. They have, like Robert Williams. I mean, the Robert Williams price has been really high, but part of their reluctance to trade for Robert Williams has been the extensive injury history. Now, I think Robert Williams and Herb Jones are not the same when it comes to their injury history if you actually look at it, but that has been a factor for the Lakers that they've been concerned, especially with the Kendrick Nunn situation, the Gabe Vincent situation, Christian Wood, the different situations they've had with signing players who are dealing with things. They are a little concerned with trading for players who are dealing with things. So that could be a factor that, I mean, I would say, like, if you're giving me the Lakers trade for Herb or the Lakers don't trade for Herb as two outcomes, I would lean more in the they don't trade for Herb. But I do think among the realistic options, he is the best player, and I think he would help them a lot. And he's both the best player and someone who I think could be realistically had for their offer, for their package. So we'll see. I think in general, my default stance is like something is less likely to happen than it is likely to happen. So I would err on the side of them not trading for him, either due to New Orleans not really trading him, the asking price being too high, a different team coming in with a better offer, or just to your point, Lakers not wanting to make a certain offer or being a little bit scared off. But it is something to factor in. Io, thank you for the super chat. Can we use expirings to help a Zion trade / get Herb? So if we look at the trade machine to try to get Zion and Herb, Zion is making $39.4 million this year, which is a high number, especially for the Lakers situation. But if you send out Herb and Zion, that combines for $55 million. That's really tough for LA to get up there. But if you did Rui, Gabe, and Maxey, that gets you to, you still need to throw in Vando. And then, okay, well, Herb can't be traded till January 14th or January 15th officially. So it works financially. The issue here is that New Orleans would have to waive 2 players and the Lakers would need to add 2 players. But in terms of the actual trade, you could do Zion and Herb for Rui, Vando, Gabe, and Maxey. At that point, you're throwing in probably every asset in terms of the first, the second, and probably a couple swaps, just because I think Herb and Zion individually are both worth a first. Vando is worth attaching something to him. So, but in terms of the actual math and the money, Rui, Vando, Gabe, and Maxey works for Zion and Herb. So I guess that's the structure of that trade. Top Dollar says, The Rock, thank you for super chat. The Rock on the throne. Sorry, Chuck. Macho over Hulk. Okay, so Randy Savage. I mean, I know a bit about wrestling. So you want to go Randy Savage over Hulk. I feel like I know more about wrestling. Like, it's almost like the NBA for some casual fans where like they know the stars, but they don't actually watch the sport. That's me. All right. I'm going to wrap here though. You know what? Professor Tech Nerd, good job. Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant should be on the list. I'll take off Hulk and put on Andre the Giant. Kane Carter, I'll wrap with Kane. He says, part of the reason why I want Rui moved is because that's the only way you'll get a starting 2-way wing. Otherwise, they won't bench him. They love him too much, even if you land Ochai and Man. There is a little bit of there's a little bit of the Torian Prince situation, I think, with Rui and with Gabe. I would say more so Gabe than Rui. Like in Rui's defense and in JJ's defense, and look, I've been anti-Rui starting, and I'm about to make the counterpoint. Like, no one is really stepping up to, like, the player who's the obvious choice is Marcus, and I think should have started from day one, but Marcus was starting before LeBron came back. Then they moved him back to the bench, and then he got injured or already was dealing with the injury. So the one obvious choice is not available right now. And then Jake LaRavia is not shooting the ball well and been inconsistent offensively. Gabe should not be starting in place of Rui. And then, Vando's not even in the rotation, and Adu is barely in the rotation. So you just go through the list, and it's like, where is this player that's supposed to be replacing Rui? I think that the clear choice is Marcus, but he's dealing with back stuff. So, I think Jake deserves a look, but I would like to see some more consistency from Jake and him not having these like every other game offensive performances. It doesn't help when he gets headbutted into his mouth, but like, I'd like to see a little bit more consistency from him. So to your point though, I think maybe it is a situation where they can only save themselves by trading him, but I don't think that's like that should not be the driving force behind trading him. I think you should only trade Rui if it makes sense to trade Rui. It's very context dependent. I think that honestly, I think the best version of this team probably is with Rui just coming off the bench and them trading for a Herb, a Wiggins, a Brooks, someone of that ilk, and that player starting and Rui coming off the bench. And then maybe there are some matchups where you close with Rui if it's not like a team that's really testing him defensively. So I still contend. I think the best version of this team probably is keeping Rui, but I'm not so like tethered to that idea that I would not move him under any circumstances. And then I guess we got another one here from Trucker Star 7. Thank you for the super chat. Herb returned tonight and looked amazing. Made life for Fox denying him the ball. Had 17, 5 and 4 with 4 steals. Archetype player Lakers need. There you go. I did see that Will Guillory, who is a buddy of mine, covers the Pelican, covers the Southeast for the Athletics, said that this is the best Herb has maybe looked all season tonight, and this is the most he's looked like himself. So one game, don't want to overreact to just that, but at least him coming off the injury and seeing some positive signs with his performance and with the way that people cover him are talking about him, that is good to know. But with all that said, I'm going to wrap here. I appreciate you all for sticking with me on the journey of a lifetime through this live. I don't even know if I'm going to be posting this to the audio version because parts of this live I was on my phone. That's the state of where we were tonight. But I appreciate you all. I did not give up because the Late Night Gang never gives up on each other, and we're always here for each other. So glad we got through it over 2 hours, and I need to contact Spectrum. My Wi-Fi has been crappy the last few weeks, but there's also been a couple days where there's been some really bad outages, including today. So I got to get that figured out. But appreciate you all for tuning in. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. If you are this deep into it, you have not yet subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. Please consider hitting that subscribe button. And if I do post this on audio, for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I am doing Spectrum. So Lakers practice at 11:45, 12, and then I'm doing Spectrum podcast and Spectrum TV. So I'll probably be back tomorrow night for a practice report / Q&A. But Top Dollar says sub. Yes, let's get those subs up. Yeah. Civic says tell Spectrum you work for the Lakers. I do. No shade at Spectrum Sportsnet, just shade at Spectrum Internet right now. But yes, the Lakers will be practicing tomorrow, and I'll be back probably at night. I'll probably be back at around a similar time, and hopefully don't have the same Wi-Fi issues. But appreciate you. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the Late Night Gang, and I will talk to you all very soon.